bring in Jamil Jaffer, founder and executive director for the National Security Institute at George Mason University's Antonin Scalia Law School. Jamil, always good to have you on. President Biden was wheels on the ground in Israel just within the last couple hours. This visit is really a test of his leadership, and there's a lot on the line politically, diplomatically, his own security. Just for starters, your thoughts on his being there. Is it advantageous or is it too risky?
Well, Markie, obviously an important moment for the president to be seen as being present in the region, being active in the region. Secretary Blinken has been there all week, working in diplomatic channels, trying to see how the situation might move forward. But President Biden being there, I think, sends an important message. We've already sent important messages by delivering weaponry to Israel directly, by bringing 2 aircraft carriers to the Mediterranean. So the president being on the ground, embracing Prime Minister Netanyahu and President Isaac Herzog, important elements of the U.S. getting engaged in the region and supporting our ally Israel.
I was also curious what you thought of their comments this morning. I mean, right after he landed, he and Netanyahu took to the stage. They both addressed the world on what's going on. Curious what you thought about Biden's comments, if his words were strong enough, his tone. I was also surprised when he said, talking about Hamas, that they have committed atrocities that make ISIS seem somewhat rational. Your thoughts and your response to the president's verbiage this morning?
Well, look, I think the president obviously is leaning forward on this issue, as he should. I mean, you think about, Markie, what happened here with 1,400 Israelis dead in a single day. It's the most people lost to the Jewish community in a single day since the Holocaust. We're talking about the equivalent of roughly 12 to 13 9/11 attacks on the U.S. on a population-adjusted basis. So we're talking a massive terrorist attack for the state of Israel, and continuing ongoing violence with the rockets coming over from Gaza and a potential second front with Hezbollah in the north. So the president's doing the right thing by being there and by expressing his support and describing the atrocities conducted by Hamas as exactly what they are. Now, that being said, the real question, Markie, is the president going to be able to stand by his words? Will we continue to do what we need to do to support our ally, particularly as things get tough and we see things happening like this hospital situation?
Yeah, actions certainly speak louder than words, and tensions aren't dampening right now. Jamil, as you know, there have also been some major agenda changes while President Biden is there. A summit scheduled with President Biden alongside the King of Jordan, the president of Egypt, head of the Palestinian Authority. That was scrapped following yesterday's blast that's thought to have killed hundreds at a Gaza hospital. How critical was that scrapped meeting between President Biden and Arab leaders?
Well, obviously a really important meeting, particularly for the Palestinian people who need supplies and need access to water, for the U.S. citizens that are being held by Hamas, as well as the U.S. citizens who are trapped in Gaza trying to get out through the Egypt-Rafah border crossing. That meeting was important for all of those elements. It's really unfortunate that the Arab leaders decided to cancel that meeting, and particularly when we don't know actually what happened at that hospital. We don't know if it was an IDF strike or, as the Israelis have argued pretty convincingly, that in fact it was an errant Islamic Jihad rocket that fell on that hospital. So we'll see what ends up happening. But I do think it's a mistake on both sides for that thing that had been canceled, and it's harmful not just to the Americans that are there, but to Palestinian civilians as well, who need that humanitarian assistance.
Yeah, you wonder what kind of progress could have been made in those moments. And lastly, Jamil, I also wanted to ask you, Robert had talked about the protests, the demonstrations erupting all over the world at this point, and in front of U.S. embassies across the Arab world just last night. Do you fear that American personnel, including the President of the United States, in the Middle East, are at risk right now?
Well, Markie, there's no doubt that the threat situation has increased for Americans globally, and particularly in the Middle East. That being said, anybody who thinks it's a good idea to go after Americans should think twice. The president's been very clear that any nation state or non-state actor who tries to come after Americans will face a severe penalty, and hopefully they take him at his word. Now, the challenge, of course, is, we've set red lines before, we haven't enforced them, and so people have questions about our defense of our allies and are willing to just defend ourselves. But I think people should understand that America will not stand for attacks on Americans, and so that's a part of it that I think is important for our adversaries to consider.
Yeah, a lot at stake here. We'll also see what kind of work can be done on getting those hostages back to safety while President Biden is there, boots on the ground. Jamil Jaffer, thanks as always.
Thank you for watching. Go to newsnationnow.com to find NewsNation on your television provider. And don't forget to click the red subscribe button below to get more of NewsNation's fact-driven, unbiased coverage.